A significant pattern change is developing across the United Kingdom. And for those of you who've been watching the models closely this week, you'll know exactly what I am referring to. A Scandinavian high pressure system is beginning to build. The question isn't whether it arrives. The question is how much influence it has on our weather through the final 10 days of January. Right now, conditions across the country vary considerably. The Scottish Highlands saw temperatures drop to -5 this morning, bitterly cold with a sharp wind. That Arctic air is already in place across northern areas. Compare that to the southwest where it's been mild and damp. Cornwall and Devon have experienced rather pleasant weather recently, temperatures running 5 to 8 degrees above the seasonal average. The Wirral reported heavy snow earlier today, according to local observations. Meanwhile, across the Midlands, it's been quiet, rather dull. Grey skies, temperatures hovering around 7 degrees. Not much to write home about. This contrast is about to compress. The Scandinavian high I mentioned is consolidating. It's positioned to our northeast, and it's beginning to exert influence on our weather pattern. This high-pressure system is forecast to reach 1045 millibars at its peak. That's substantial. When you see pressure values that high, it alters the entire atmospheric flow across northwestern Europe. Let me explain what's happening meteorologically. The jet stream is being forced southwards. That's the critical mechanism here. Low-pressure systems that would normally track across the UK from west to east are being blocked. They're slowing down. Some are being deflected. The Atlantic influence is being resisted. You can see this already in the model output. Weather systems approaching from the west are making limited progress eastwards. They re-spiraling in place over the Republic of Ireland rather than moving through as they normally would. The Met Office has suggested in their recent 14-day trend that a Scandinavian high is unlikely to sweep in completely. They reforecasting temperatures at the end of the month to be slightly below average, but nothing drastic. I've examined their reasoning. They being cautious, and that caution is warranted to a degree, but the model consensus is shifting. The ECMWF, the GFS, and particularly the AIFS, the AI-driven forecast model, are all showing a colder pattern establishing itself. The AIFS is worth discussing briefly. This is the European Centre-S machine learning model. It doesn't use traditional physics equations. Instead, it analyzes historical data and pattern recognition. It has been consistently more bullish on the easterly flow than the traditional physics-based models. The ensemble mean from the AIFS is showing temperatures dropping to -5, possibly -6 Celsius by the final week of January. That's colder than the GFS ensemble mean by 1 to 2 degrees. Whether the AI model proves more accurate remains to be seen, but it's offering a different perspective. And when multiple forecasting approaches converge on a similar outcome, confidence increases. Looking at today specifically, low cloud, mist and fog are affecting eastern areas. That's because the low pressure system that brought blustery showers through yesterday is filling. The pressure gradient is weakening. Winds are becoming slack. That's allowing low cloud to form and persist. It could be quite stubborn. If you restuck under that low cloud, particularly across central and eastern England, it is going to feel rather cold, even though temperatures are about what you'd expect for mid-January, generally peaking from around 6 to 7 Celsius in the north to around 9 and possibly 10 Celsius towards the south. Showers are affecting western and southwestern parts, mainly around the Irish Sea. Some of them could be heavy. There is a swathe of showers pushing northwards across parts of England and Wales into Scotland through the afternoon. Away from the west and southwest, many of the showers are clearing, so it's turning drier with some breaks in the cloud, particularly towards the west. Some sunshine breaking through, eastern areas staying under that stubborn cloud. A fairly damp end to the day across some central eastern parts of Scotland. Could be a bit of sleet and snow over the higher ground, but most of that rain clears through overnight. Then apart from a few showers here and there, lots of dry weather for a time. Thick cloud across eastern parts. That thick cloud could lower to some murkiness. So once more, some mist, some fog. Central eastern parts in particular likely to have difficult driving conditions, poor visibility early Sunday morning, further west, clearer skies. Even with these clear skies, we could see a few patches of fog developing and a touch of frost here and there. Temperatures dropping a few degrees below freezing in some places. Then, later in the night, more rain and thicker cloud coming in from the southeast. Where we get that thicker cloud continuing, temperatures want to drop a huge amount. Sunday starts wet across some central southeastern parts of England. That rain slowly makes progress northwards. It's going to affect everywhere from the West Country up through eastern Wales, up towards northern England, and later eastern parts of Scotland. Elsewhere, actually, a fair amount of fine weather, much of Scotland avoiding the rain, albeit a few showers for western parts. Much of Northern Ireland also staying largely dry, just a few showers perhaps towards the east. Some drier, brighter weather developing across parts of East Anglia and maybe Kent, possibly even towards London later in the afternoon. Where you're under the cloud and rain, it's going to feel rather cold. In other places where we get sunshine breaking through, not too bad considering it is the middle of January. Temperatures reaching 6 to 10 degrees Celsius across most areas. Frost where skies clear overnight, particularly in western and northwestern parts. As we go into next week, the pattern becomes more interesting. The blocking high to our northeast strengthens. The GFS operational run has been fairly bullish over the past few days for very cold conditions. Yesterday, S run was less convinced, but today it's back on board. You can see the high pressure really starting to take over Scandinavia. Initially, it S not orientated to pull in bitterly cold easterlies. It halts the jet stream and doesn't allow much Atlantic influence to move in. By next weekend, around 7 to 8 days from now, the GFS shows bitterly cold easterly winds with heavy snow showers, most likely affecting areas near the North Sea. Now, the high pressure does collapse quite quickly in that run, so it could be cold and snowy for a couple of days before reverting to a drier, colder pattern. Interestingly, that high pressure system rebuilds. We see another spell of easterly winds as we head into the final few days of the month and into early February, with another push of cold or even very cold air. We not tapping into the really bitterly cold beast from the east-type air masses, not quite reaching that threshold at this time frame, but we are getting close. The air is very cold. The pattern stays chilly under the high pressure. Then potentially another spell of very cold air late January to early February. The GEM model has shown mixed signals. Some runs very cold, setting up a sustained cold pattern. Other days, not so much. Currently, it's showing the cold but unsettled scenario. We've still got the block up to our north, but it's not strong enough to pull in very cold air from the east. Instead, we end up with cold but rainy conditions with low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. We not in terribly cold air masses, not terribly mild either. It's one of those patterns where weather fronts push in, coming up against that cold block. The very cold air remains in the North Sea or just across the near continent. For us, cold rain. Temperatures 4, 5, 6 degrees, maybe 7 with heavy rain and precipitation. A more miserable but colder pattern. The ECMWF has also shown mixed output over recent days. It was quite early to latch on to colder easterlies last week and continues to show it in some runs. It's not quite as quick to turn to an easterly later next week. It keeps conditions very unsettled into next week. A battleground scenario with low pressure off the Atlantic, high pressure to our northeast. Eventually, easterlies do win in most runs because it is more of a battleground. We are not pulling in the very cold easterly winds initially. We pull in cold air, but not as much of a long, fetched, direct, long-lasting easterly. A lot of that very cold air doesn't get pulled all the way to Western Europe. Instead, we see colder air with big battles going on. Towards the end of the ECMWF run, we do see a brisk, strong easterly wind. There'd be heavy snowfall with a low sinking southwards. But it's a more marginal pattern. That S because the lows are stronger. The rain, snow, or colder to less cold boundary is right over the UK. It would be a battle with that line moving back and forth. A bit of a messy scenario. But it would be cold. There would be some wintriness around. The polar vortex split is also worth monitoring. When the stratospheric polar vortex splits or weakens significantly, it often leads to sustained cold patterns at the surface several weeks later. The current split looks promising. It is another factor supporting the idea that colder conditions are more likely than milder conditions through late January and into February. What does this mean practically? Over the coming days, rainfall continues. We're going to stay reasonably unsettled. But slowly, that high pressure to our northeast will have more influence. By the end of next week, especially in the east, we could definitely be under the influence more of that higher pressure, colder, frostier, foggier conditions. Then in subsequent days, we could start to turn colder and maybe even wintrier. For areas that didn't see much during the snow event a few days ago, an easterly pattern would bring a very different distribution of snow. North Sea coastal areas, East Anglia, the east of England generally, these regions would be most at risk. The Pennines, the North York Moors, eastern Scotland. These areas could see significant accumulations if the easterly becomes established. The southwest, Wales and western areas generally would see less. That is the opposite of what we typically experience with Atlantic systems. Some of you have been waiting for proper winter weather. East Anglia in particular, you've gone several winters without decent snow coverage in some areas. This pattern has potential, but I am not going to promise anything until we see how these systems develop. Models at 7 to 10 day range still have considerable uncertainty. The difference between a cold but dry pattern, a cold but unsettled pattern, and a very cold and wintry pattern comes down to the exact positioning of that Scandinavian high and how much the Atlantic can resist. If you ray in Scotland, you ray already dealing with cold conditions. You know how to manage. But for those in the southeast, this sort of cold would be unusual. Most people in southern areas keep snow shovels to hand. That's fair enough. If we do see the colder pattern established, consider working from home if snow is forecast. The roads want to be gritted as thoroughly as they would be further north. Public transport can be significantly disrupted. Temperatures are gradually going to drop as we go through next week, but it's going to take a while for anything much colder than what we currently have to establish. The trend is towards colder. The ensemble means from multiple models support this. The GFS ensembles show average to above average over the coming days. Around 7, 8, 9 degrees in London, a degree or two above average. By the middle to end of next week, we trend close to average, then eventually below average come next weekend. Some of those runs start to pull in easterlies. Not all. About a quarter to a fifth of ensemble members. But slowly, more and more into the final week of January show much colder outcomes. The ensemble mean gets down close to -4, -5. That's a fairly strong cold signal, though I wouldn't say it's locked in, as there are still milder runs. We wouldn't expect it to be locked in anyway, being 7 to 10 days away. There are those very cold runs, those more beast from the east type runs, showing -10 and lower. The operational GFS is at that level. There are other ensemble members showing similar outcomes, maybe 7, 8, 9, possibly 10 at most, that get down to that level at some point. That S a lot, but it S not an overwhelming number to say it S definitely the favored scenario. It is the most favored it has been all winter for that depth of cold. But it S by no means guaranteed or a locked-in pattern at this stage. Definitely real interest, and it has trended that way this week. The ECMWF ensembles are similar. A drop-off longer term, maybe not quite as cold with its general ensembles, but it has quite a few very cold runs as well. Overall, slightly milder than the GFS with more runs closer to average. Still slightly below average, just not quite as cold as those GFS runs. Perhaps less bullish on a strong easterly. What's interesting is the AIFS ensemble members. They are very much on board with that colder or bitterly cold pattern. The ensemble mean is probably even colder than the GFS by a degree or two, down towards -5, maybe -6. There are a lot more runs down towards -8, -10, and then a good cluster still at -10 and below, including the operational AIFS model. The point of inflection for that very cold air to move in is around a week's time. I suspect in the next 2 or 3 days, we'll have a much better idea on the timings of the potential easterly or cold easterly and the depth of cold. We'll either see that cold signal strengthen with all models coming on board, 70 or 80% showing very cold, rather than the 30 or 40% showing very cold right now. Or we go the other way, where very cold becomes more of a minority option and we see more of a battleground scenario. It's very much at odds at the moment. I don't want to call it definitively because these patterns have failed to materialize many times over recent years, but there is significant interest. The final 5 days of January, I'd say maybe not as early as the 23rd or 24th, but the 25th, 26th onwards into early February, there is a reasonably strong chance it turns much colder. If it turns very cold down towards ice day levels, then of course a high chance of seeing further wintriness. With an easterly wind, that wintriness would be a lot more widespread and potentially more severe for areas that didn't see much at all earlier in January. The distribution changes completely. It's worth monitoring closely over the coming days. For now, unsettled weather continues. Rain at times, windy at times, temperatures not dropping a huge amount initially, but the building blocks are there for a pattern change. Whether it is a modest change or a significant one remains to be seen. The models will converge over the next 72 hours. We'll know much more by early next week about what late January holds. Stay alert to forecast updates. This is the sort of pattern where small changes in positioning make large differences in outcomes. The difference between rain and snow, the difference between cold and very cold, the difference between a few flurries and significant accumulations, we're rewatching it closely. I'll keep you updated as the models refine their solutions.